Welcome to The Lead Climb, the podcast where we break down the strategies that drive patient acquisition and growth in behavioral health. Hosted by Growth Sherpa Consulting, we bring you expert insights on digital marketing, admissions, business development, and more, so your treatment center, mental health clinic, or private practice can thrive. Whether you're a CEO, admissions director, or marketing pro, this is where you'll find the tools to scale smarter. Follow us up the mountain. Let's lock in.
So today we have Jonathan Gross, CEO of JG Healthcare Solutions. Jonathan, welcome to the Climb podcast. For those who don't know you, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what JG does?
Well, thanks for having me, Steve. It's good to be here with you after our long conversation of what we're going to talk about today. And like I said, I'm the CEO of JG Healthcare Solutions. We're a new company, so we started in June of 2023. And prior to that, my whole career has been in behavioral healthcare, mostly focused on patient acquisition, and worked for some pretty large companies and had a sales roles, admissions roles, direct performance production roles, focused on B2B partnerships and how to get people into treatment efficiently and effectively and make sure they get the resources they need.
Awesome. So you've had a pretty quick trajectory through this industry from, like you said, individual contributor, the B2B roles, up to executive leadership for some really respectable programs out there. What would you attribute that to? Can you talk a little bit about your journey? Or
Yeah.
a lot of people who are watching this might be in that place right now where they're trying to find themselves to that growth. Like, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, no, I'm happy to. I think the one parallel that I've had with a lot of people I talk to in the space is that I'm sort of a genuine artifact of the space, especially in like the young adult failure to launch space. So that was the space that I worked in for the first 6 years of my career, and how I found myself in that position was I was an alumni of a young adult program, and while I was in that program, built the relationships with the owners where they asked me to represent them. So I started doing alumni speaking engagements, talking about my experience at the company. It was a company that was open for 18 years called Life Designs Ranch up in the Pacific Northwest in Washington. So I worked there for 6 years. After that, in various roles, we opened a transitional living program in 2009, and I was the program director of that. It was called Creative Transitions. So I ran Creative Transitions as like the extended care of Life Designs Ranch, and still continued to do alumni speaking engagements. I represented them at the NATSAP conferences, the IECAs for educational consultants, and kind of wore all the hats over those 6 years: admissions, BD, program director, coaching the people that came through the program. Never went back to school for anything clinical, so I don't have a clinical or medical background, more just like program development, admissions, and BD. But the owners made the decision to shut down the program after 18 years, um, and part of that sort of like dovetailed into my next chapter. There was a new group in Washington that came up from Arizona, and they were starting commercial insurance-based treatment, which at that time I had no experience in. They were starting a detox and a residential program, a PHP, IOP, with a lot of sober livings. And so the sober living transitional program that I was running kind of got absorbed into that larger network of sober livings. They had 8 houses and, 30 people on support staff and a bunch of the full continuum of care. And so when I met those folks, they asked me to come on and be their head of programming. So I was over all the support staff, and so all the sober livings, all the overnight staff. And so I did that, and then when we opened the detox, I did all the admissions for the detox. And so a lot of changes in behavioral healthcare over the last 10 years. But that company was acquired, which is happening a lot more and more. And so when that company was acquired, I ended up going to work for Acadia Healthcare because I wanted to learn everything from the big dogs and learn Salesforce. And people kept talking about KPIs, and I wanted to know what that meant. So I went to work for Acadia as a treatment placement specialist for a couple years, and I think in that role, it became clear to me that I did want to be back in leadership. It was like this initial relief that I didn't have a lot of direct reports and I could just like kind of run my own business and focus on getting people the care they needed. And I had an awesome boss and coach there at that company who's still in the business. Her name is Marina, and she's recently gone over to Meadows and is someone that I still really look up to. Um, and so, anyways, I had a really good experience there. But after a couple of years, I wanted to get back into leadership. I wanted to lead teams. I wanted to coach people. And so I took an opportunity to go work at Recovery Ways and build their sales team out and got to recruit a lot of people and create culture and really kind of hone my skills as a sales leader. And the boss and mentor that I had there is a gentleman I'm still connected to, James Bailey. He ended up becoming the chief operating officer at Discovery Behavioral Health. And so when the timing was right and we were doing a lot of acquisitions that made sense here in my local market, the acquisition of Casa Palmera into their portfolio when I was living in San Diego, it made a lot of sense for me to jump on there and do some sales leadership stuff there. So for the first year, we focused on integrating all the sales teams in the substance use disorder division. Um, and had a really good time doing that. And I was working with Joe Tinervin as the president of the substance use division, and still work with him today. And we've gotten really close and become good friends. And we worked together at Acadia as well. He was actually the main sort of catalyst that led me to Acadia. We met at a networking event and in Seattle. He was giving a presentation about Bayside Marin and really liked the guy. And so I guess like the theme of my trajectory is relationship. It's like I meet people, I connect with people, we have a shared vision. I feel like we align ethically, and so I follow those relationships. And even though if you look on my LinkedIn, there's been all these different companies, the people have really stayed the same. And so I've been really fortunate to get larger positions with more direct reports and larger teams so I can, just continue to do that leadership thing, but on a larger level. And when I left to start my own companies, it was the first time that I was kind of doing it for myself. So that's been an exciting, year and a half journey to really build my team of people that I've met over the years at conferences. And as I mentioned, Joe's one of those people that's now our president of operations. So it's really cool to see some of those people and situations come full circle.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and you definitely had a lot. It sounds like scale of responsibility jumps, right? You from TPS to leading departments and how did you? Because I know this was something I always found interesting in my own journey was you're not always given the playbook, right? Like you're expected to do these responsibilities and you have these tasks and it's due soon and you've never done it before. Like, how did you find your playbook when it was just kind of saying, hey, here you go, this is your job now? I think that happens a lot to folks, not just in our industry and business in general. And I'm always curious to hear how that works out for folks.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. It's a great question. I think the number one thing that I have in my life is the ability to ask for help. I find myself in new situations, and there's people there that are, far more the subject matter expert than I am of that individual company. They've been there longer than me. I'm the new guy, even though I might be their boss in a lot of circumstances. And so it's in my best interest to lean on those people and say, hey, what's going on here? What are the systems we're using? Help me understand the process and just really listening, right? So I think that's the big thing is like asking for help. And then, I when I see things as like glaring deficits of like problems or inefficiencies, I like to point those out and just like use people as sounding boards and say like, hey, are you seeing this the same way as me? It's pretty similar to asking for help, but it's just like, hey, here's something that I notice. Is there a reason why we're doing this? Is this like a learned helplessness situation, or is there, is there something that I'm not seeing? Are you seeing it differently? And so I think that is pretty relevant to the conversation of leadership, right? It's like finding consensus, finding buy-in. We were talking about, I just start that process of just like really asking for help and leaning into the people that know more about the system than I do and going from there.
Yeah, the seeking to understand versus seeking to be understood
Right.
in those situations is so valuable. I remember early in my career, I was with Universe Uniform Rentals and in the facility services division. Of course, I'm 25 and I know everything, right? I'm a sales manager. I've had these 2 years of experience in the corporate world, and it was amazing to me. I thought, what are we doing here with this higher turnover rate? Because Cintas and UniFirsts and ADPs and Paychecks and all those first early sales gigs for a lot of people. The role is go there for a year, maybe two, get awards, get trained, and then go do pharmaceutical or med device or something from that. That was very commonplace. And I was seeing the same turnovers for my teams and my peers and thought, man, this is a huge problem. How can they do this? And then it was about 15 years later, I was in my vet's office and I sold that vet 15 years prior, about $40 a week worth of revenue or $50 a week worth of revenue of sales. And they've been doing that consistently for 15 straight years off that one sale. And I kept thinking, okay, that's how. Like that's something I didn't understand. The turnover isn't the problem. It's the longevity of the accounts. The service members are the true heart and soul of that organization. But of course, me at that early age with limited experience, it was more of a I see things only through the prism of my experiences and how dare they sales be at this high turnover. So um, looking back, I see that and go, oh man, if I would have asked, if I would have tried to understand, if I would have talked to the general manager or my regional director, like, well, how does this make sense? Like, why are we turning people over? The big
Mm.
picture would have been really helpful. And so I think that's one of those skills. And as I coach younger reps in our space now, because Growth Sherpa started a lot as fractional BD leadership and one-on-one coaching has morphed quite a bit over the last year and a half. Um, a lot of that is coming through with the younger reps in our field who have tons of energy, tons of passion, and tons of just desire to change the world. I think that's a great millennial trait is the desire to change the world around you, but not asking for that help, right? It's like seeing the problem or perceived problem, jumping right in and going, I'm going to fix it. And then everyone else around them, whoa, there's probably a little more to that. So I love hearing that 'cause I know I made that mistake. I see it being made a lot in coaching currently. But I think that's a positive mistake. It's a mistake of passion. It's not a mistake of malice.
I agree. Yeah, and I think it changes, or it's changed for me over the years of like when I was younger in my career, I had this idea that I was supposed to have answers, like I was supposed to have things figured out, like I was supposed to present myself in a way where I had the solutions to leadership. And I think there is a certain truth to that. But I think as I've gone further, I don't know if it's laziness or what, but like it's actually a lot easier to not know, if that makes sense, especially as a new CEO of companies, because I'm not, um, you know, like I said earlier, I'm not clinical and medical. I'm not the expert when it comes to accreditation or contracting, credentialing, and so. I have to really surround myself with people that know more than me, which this is easy in my case. So, but I think back to in my corporate sort of trajectory, that became more and more apparent as I go. It's like it's actually a lot easier to use that, asking for help, finding the consensus method to finding solutions, and instead of trying to feel like it's up to me, I'm the leader, I have to solve all these things, I have to figure out all these things myself, I have to be the smartest person in the room. I'd much rather not be the smartest person in the room and and ask all the people like, hey, what's best practice here? Like, a big part of it, because not only was I responsible for sales in my last role and for you know the whole clinical outreach team and the various types of teams and all the levels of leadership, but I was also over what we call care coordination and referral relations, like tracking the patient journey. And the reason that's relevant is because that a lot of that is a clinical function. And so to have a senior leader like myself with no clinical background it's a little unusual and outside of the norm. And so how do you reconcile that? And I think it was by conversations, and like the cultural component of it was key, like talking to the clinicians about the clinical function of it. Like, no, it's your job to communicate clinical needs of our patients, and we have to be in compliance for Joint Commission to give them all the resources and all the recommendations for step down. But it's our team's job to handle the logistical function of that, getting the ROIs in place, making the phone calls, making sure the other providers have availability. And so I think it was just like a really healthy dialogue around like the various natures of our business. Like there's the clinical business, there's the people side of the business, there's the cultural component, and a lot of it is just the logistical function of like crossing T's and dotting I's and making sure that it all flows smoothly. And I like that stuff. I like the complexity of it. I like problem solving. And I love situations where like the only way it all comes together is if there's consensus, is if we're working together, is if the right hand knows what the left hand's doing. And so you could have the best policies and procedures and protocols in the world. If you don't have people that are getting along, that are trying to help one another, that's where, culture is key on all of it. And I think that's the biggest, kind of subject when you're talking to other leaders is how do you create healthy culture and minimize turnover and get people, where they're all trying to be of service to one another so we can accomplish our goals.
Yeah, I love this idea too, because for patient care, we as executives see treatment centers as kind of siloed departments, right? You have your clinical, your admissions, your outreach, your medical, et cetera, et cetera. But for a patient, that's one process for them, right? It's one team. They don't see the differentiation, or they shouldn't be seeing it, right? And so they expect you talk to an outreach rep and they get passed on to admissions and then to intake and so on. It should all be an aligned process and it's all an
Mhm.
ecosystem of their patient journey, right? Um, but if you don't have a cohesive team or as an executive leader, you haven't put things into place for your departments to all be able to collaborate and resolve issues that inevitably happen. It's never, a Pandora of organization. There's always going to be complexities and challenges and disagreements, and that's what makes them great. It's the toxic cultures where no one disagrees, everyone just kind of goes with it. I think that's the bigger issue. Um, but from the patient journey, having all those aligned just is better healthcare. And I think that's why we all got into this line of work in the first place to some degree, is saying, I want to make a positive impact. I want to, as we were talking about earlier, I want to make sure that the better I am at my job, the more people get well. That's pretty cool. Yeah, I've sold a lot of things in my life, and I can't say that about air fresheners I sold in the past or or things like that. It's hasn't really happened. But for this, I think if everyone's aligned and rowing the same direction, all things else equal, you're going to have a better patient experience, better outcomes, and better, um, you know, better sobriety, better mental health, better communities. So I think that's a pretty cool component of the leadership in our space is that it's a little bit better than just it's a little bit more grand than just us working together on a team in a corporation.
Yeah, no, it's well said. I don't like telling people no either, I like it's okay to say I don't know and I'll find out the answers. But when I first was doing admissions in that more like young adult focused space, all those programs or most of those programs, especially at that time, were all cash pay programs. And so if you had people contacting you that really needed help and they didn't have the resources, then you had to say, I'm sorry, we can't take you. We don't have the scholarship availability. And that was like soul crushing for me. So I wanted to find out, how to say, I might not know what you're looking for, but I'm going to find out. And I think, that sort of has been the baseline of my journey. It's like I might not know the answers. I usually don't, but I want to find solutions and I want to figure it out for people. Whether you're in admissions and you're talking to the patients and the family members, or you're talking to your teammates, the ultimate goal in leadership is to overcome barriers and find solutions for the challenges of the day. And so that's what my brain sort of like focuses on, and that's why I like being in leadership is because it's a team effort of continuing to fine tune whatever process we're in to ultimately like deliver a desired outcome, which is saying yes and finding those resources and adding that value to our customers or our, contracted partners. And at the end of the day, we all want to feel like we're being of service and we're bringing value to the people that we're working with. And so I like to try to just like work it backwards and figure out what's the easiest, safest, most effective way to have the desired outcomes where everybody feels good about it.
Okay, so we're running a little short on time, so I did want to ask you something. You mentioned kind of going back to Acadia and resetting and kind of taking away from the responsibilities of leadership and things like that. I did a very similar thing in my career as well, where actually several times in my career I would manage and I go back to being in the field for a while, reflect on what I did well, what I didn't do well, go back to leadership, and kind of go back. Over the last couple of years, I don't know if you noticed this, but probably like the last 2 years or so, I've noticed there've been a lot of senior directors, executive leaders for organizations, people we all know and love, leaving the more corporate spaces to start their own companies. Obviously, you and I have done that in our journey. How much of that do you think is them returning back to the core roots of what made them passionate about this industry to begin with? And by that I mean, for those who haven't been one, two, or three steps removed from the patient or from what got you into this space, you can end up getting this decision tree, in my experience, of saying, okay, I can be at a conference, I can do a field ride, I can do my budget, I can review my KPIs, I can be in a board meeting, I can do the work that I need to do to catch up. I can't do it all. I got to pick and choose. And ultimately, some really good stuff gets laid to the cutting room floor. What are your thoughts on that? Have you seen that as well, or is something that you can relate with as far as finding that, I guess, that core passion, that core competency again?
Yeah, I mean, I talk to a lot of people, that have left larger companies to go start their own thing, and it's certainly a common denominator of people wanting to recalibrate, wanting, to, recommit to their own development, to find their passion for what it is that they do. I mean, I had a really good experience. Like my why, and my partners know this, is to help the people that I'm working with accomplish their goals. And so I was able to really do that with large teams and in corporate settings. And that's what I'm trying to do now as the CEO of JG Healthcare Solutions and the companies that we're operating is, really empower the people that I'm working with to stretch themselves, to grow as professionals, to grow as humans. I mean, I think a lot of the conversations that I've had over the years with people that directly report to me, they're not always focused on work either. Like we rely on each other to talk about, I mean, we went through a pandemic together and a lot of us were having little kids at the same time. And so that's what I love about what we do in the behavioral healthcare space is that it's not all clocking in at 9 to 5. It's connecting with people and really having more intimate relationships and learning about them as humans and as fathers and mothers and wives and husbands and all the things that they do in their personal lives and their passions, their hobbies. And so I think people, when you leave larger groups and you go to start your own thing, one of the real benefits that you can do is you get to choose those relationships. I listened to this guy, Jim Vandehei, give a speech at the first marketing exchange in Vegas, and he said, a lot of people have heard me tell the story. He said, I don't really care how good people are at the core functions of their job and how many letters they have after their name. If I don't also align with them morally and ethically and think that they're good human beings, then they don't have any business working for me or any of my companies. And when I heard him say that, I told him afterwards, I was like, that you said that with like such conviction that it actually like changed my life because I want to be on a journey, regardless of what services we're providing, regardless of what type of programs we're opening. I want to be a journey on people that are like on a journey with people that are my inner circle, that are people that I love and I trust and I know them and I know their families. Because we talk all the time, like we want to do things out of work together. We want to travel together and vacation together and have our kids know each other. And so I think there's so many people in behavioral healthcare that that's what they want. They want connection and they want community. And so, to be able to create that for yourself after having these experiences, creating that in large corporate systems is really attractive for me and a lot of people that are doing it themselves like you. And ultimately it's all a blessing and it's all a gift have had that experience and be in a position to do that now for myself. And I think we all feel the same way that are doing it.
Yeah, so that's so well said. Well, Jonathan, I appreciate having you on. Can you tell everyone where to find you?
Yeah, so I think right now you can find me on LinkedIn under Jonathan Gross. We have a few websites. Our women's program in Atlanta is revelarerecovery.com. We'll make sure there's tags and links and stuff because it might not be the easiest one to spell. jghealthcaresolutions.com, Kansas Renewal Institute. Those are our three websites, and so always happy to be of service and connect with new people.
Excellent. Thanks so much. And if you guys have watched or listened this long, thank you. Really appreciate that. That's awesome. And make sure you like, share all the things that YouTubers say that I'm not good at saying, but I appreciate that for this one. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Steve.
That's a wrap for this episode of The Lead Climb. We hope you picked up some valuable insights to help optimize your patient acquisition and grow your behavioral health organization. If you found today's discussion helpful, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this podcast with your network. And if you're looking for expert guidance in digital marketing, admissions, business development, or any other piece of the patient acquisition puzzle, Growth Sherpa Consulting is here to help. Visit us at www.growthsherpaconsulting.com. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time on The Lead Climb.